The Battle Hosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to The Battle Hosts, a podcast and website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Matt. How are you doing, Matt?
Hello. How is everyone doing this evening or day, wherever you are?
It's been a while since we've had you on. We are as we record this, we're still in the depths of COVID-19, sheltering in place and such. So we have not been able to record in person. So we've figured out a way to record remotely. Imagine that. So.
Well, I have an objection to coughing into my elbow and shoulder, so Mark is wisely not allowed, to let me into his home or be around me. So, I understand.
Well, we're trying to be safe. So tonight we're going to talk about 40K on a budget. So last week we chatted about how to finish your army, but this time I'm going to talk about how to get into the hobby without spending an arm and a leg, because we both know that this is a very expensive hobby. So if you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube to catch all latest episodes. You can also follow us on Facebook under The Battle Host. If you'd like to support The Battle Host for as little as $1 a month, please visit patreon.com/TheBattleHost. If you join for $3 a month, you can access our Discord chat where we discuss all things related to the hobby. So in this episode, as I mentioned, we're going to discuss how to be part of the 40K hobby while on a budget. We're going to talk about limiting impulse purchases and buying models you will use and enjoy, and how to get discounts on models. We also talk about strategies such as converting and magnetizing bits purchases to save money. Finally, we discuss hobby supplies and what is worth the money and what is not, because there's just a lot of stuff out there, and it's really easy to buy things basically you don't need. As I'm on Facebook a little more than I used to be because I'm working from home, I bought a pair of this headset that is a LED light with a magnifying glass sort of attached to it for that up-close painting, so I can actually see really closely on the model. And at first I'm like, okay, this is a really dumb purchase because it's like $30 or some dumb thing. But it turns out it was actually kind of useful. So some of these gadgetry things are actually kind of cool, and some of them probably aren't so much. So
that Google algorithm got you.
It got me, yeah. It knew what I wanted and knew. Well, obviously, because most of my Facebook feed is Warhammer related, so I imagine it just knew.
It only needed 3 data points. It needed disposable income, nerd, and old, and it had you. It had you.
It's like, hey, your eyesight's going a little bad, isn't it? So why don't you try this thing out? My golly, you got me. If you want to check out our last episode on finishing an army, on how to get your purchases built and ready to play. Really, that's the biggest thing, is we kind of advocate creating a collection of models so you can draw from and you can create different lists, and you're kind of avoiding being stuck with a limited army that you don't enjoy playing. There's nothing worse than having an idea or chasing like the new hotness of a list, buying all these models, getting them built and getting them painted, and by the time you get them ready, they're just not what you wanted, or you lost interest in them, or you're just kind of like, I'm not feeling it, or it doesn't play the way it is, or they FAQ it and it's not good anymore. That is essentially, that is money that could have been better spent on building up a collection that you really enjoy. So check out our last episode on that. And but yeah, for this one here, we're going to talk about some tips on how to save a little money when you're in the 40K hobby. But before we jump into that, let's hear a word from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40K, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40K events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40K events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these fine clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
Okay, and we're back. So 40K, it's an expensive hobby. Now, I know there are probably other hobbies that are more expensive, like golf or scuba diving, or I don't know. There are some. But
fly fishing.
Yeah.
Stamp collecting.
Yeah.
Miniature spoon collecting. Any collecting is expensive.
It does get expensive for sure. And really, the most expensive part about Warhammer 40K is buying the models. Obviously, the painting and the accessories can add up, but models are the biggest chunk of it. There are rule books and there are supplies that can add up as well, but really, you're spending a lot of your money on buying boxes of Warhammer 40K models, and those are not cheap. And I know that you get what you pay for. I find that they are oftentimes worth it. However, they're kind of expensive. And so the first thing we talk about really when it comes to hobbying on a budget is buying models with intent, and meaning that when you go and you buy a box of models, you're buying this because you have a plan for this. GW does a really good job of promoting and hyping models, like all the time. And they constantly, and I admit the two of us have fallen for these things constantly, right?
Oh, this is definitely a do what we say, not what we do situation.
We both have Bandai Space Marines that are going to be arriving in the mail anytime.
And we ordered these when neither of us had a Space Marine army.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We didn't even have any buy-in to this whole Space Marine thing. We just saw a Bandai figure and said, "Take my money."
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did.
We did. I will say there's lots of things we do pass up, but there are some things that just and there just are. There's limited edition lieutenants. There's the new Catachan Colonel that has come out that I know is limited edition, but he looks cool. And I don't play Guard, but he's a cool model. So Games Workshop does a great job of promoting and hyping, and we all get excited about the cool stuff that comes out. And it's really, really easy to, I want to say fall for the hype, but kind of get sucked into the hype.
They have a multi-million-dollar marketing department for a reason.
Yep.
I mean, they're very good at pushing their plastic crack, and we love them for it. But it is very easy to, man, I really want one of those Catachan Colonels because it reminds me of
it's Carl Weathers,
Dutch from Predator.
Yep.
Like, okay, I have all Xenos armies though. What is this one Catachan Colonel gonna do with my entire Xenos armies? But their models just are so cool.
They are, yeah, for sure. And I think that buying a model here and there. I think you bought the Sister of Battle, the limited edition one that they just came out with.
That was, yes, that was a moment of weakness.
Yeah.
They were pairing the new Librarian in Terminator armor with the new Sister of Battle. I'm like, they'll buy them together. It's a little bit cheaper, and afterwards it's like there's no reason for me to get a Sister of Battle.
No, but
and it's not even a character. It's a single Sister of Battle that they say you can either use as a Sister Superior or something like that. It's not even an HQ or anything like that.
Yeah. So she's a sergeant basically, but she's on the cover. She's kind of that same look and pose. So yeah. And I think
and yes, impulse buys get all of us, but I mean, there are some tried and true methods to stop impulse buying. So for example, I think we've all been at the grocery store and gotten that bag of chips that we didn't need or that candy bar that's right there at the register because they know you're going to impulse buy right there at the register.
Yep.
That's why supermarkets are really smart.
Yep.
Give it some time. Give it, even with these 2-week made to order things that got me that I didn't, heed my own advice on. Give it a week and say, okay, I will set an alarm and in a week I will revisit this. And if I still want it, I'll get it.
Yep.
But give it a week type thing.
Yep.
And you will find that will eliminate about 99% of your impulse buying right there.
Yeah. Give it a week. Like if you walk into Games Workshop, and especially if you walk into one of the Games Workshop sort of stores they have, it's really easy because everyone is building models and people are playing games and there's all the new stuff and all the new shiny stuff. If you look at a box of models, I think, first of all, give it a week. If you still want that in a week and you have plans for that, great. Maybe pick it up and go for it. But you're right. Give it a week is always just good advice for any kind of impulse purchase, like any kind of purchase in life, for sure.
But then GW knows exactly what we want. I mean, Mark, you and I, as soon as those Eldar and Dark Eldar sketchbooks came out,
Mm-hmm.
that they offered those for a limited time. Yeah, we were all over those. I could have waited 2 weeks and still wanted those things, you know. And sometimes you want what you want.
Sure.
But most of the time you get the whole single Sister of Battle coming to you in the mail, and you'll scratch your head when you get it in the mail. And I will scratch my head when I get it in the mail.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's okay to do that occasionally, but if you do it all the time, then you really aren't getting anywhere. You're buying to buy. And when you buy a model, we'll take the Sisters of Battle out of it. So I have an AdMech army, right? And it has all these new AdMech stuff that's coming out. I'm already thinking about like, okay, what is it that I'm going to purchase? What do I really want to do? And some of the questions I'm asking is like, okay, will this strengthen or add to my army? So those flyers, AdMech don't have flyers. So the flyers might, depending on the rules, so I got to wait for the rules to come out too. That might fit in my army. It might be something I want to add. I want to play something different. So maybe I want to try a different army. We both got into Marines because, first of all, Marines were good, but they were also interesting. And they're a very different play style, and kind of everyone has Marines. So it was kind of a different thing to get into. Sometimes you want things because it looks cool. Maybe you're trying to buy something because you're starting a new army, but really, you want to really kind of consider, what are my plans when I buy this box of models or boxes of models?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks cool reason you can only take so far.
Mm-hmm.
And I think before the new Gaz came out, the coolest model in the 40K range was Ahriman on a disc. The new Ahriman, that is the coolest model. Oh, yeah. I think they really took it to the next level. Oh, and the new Illuminator, the new Necron Illuminator.
Oh, yeah,
sucking the soul out of that dude. That's got to be the coolest model.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Mark and I are going to start a Necron army based on that one model.
Mm-hmm.
That it looks cool, but you got to be really careful with that one, because Mark, you started Thousand Suns, and was that based on this army looks cool type of mentality?
Oh yeah. It was totally Magnus, and all of it came out. All the new plastics came out last edition, and I wanted that army, and because I just loved them. I like the lore of them. They are an interesting chaos army. And I went in and I bought a bunch of stuff, but painting those rubrics, I didn't really have a plan for how to get them, going. And I didn't have a collection of chaos to draw from, and eventually just stalled out. So It's kind of one of those things where I would like to pick them up someday. I mean, I'm not going to sell them yet. I have a feeling that I might sort of finish that collection and just say, here's my Thousand Suns army and done. Mm-hmm. But now they're sort of sitting on a backlog, like a distant fourth. The things I want to work on right now. So
yeah, well, and just painting rubrics was the deal breaker for you, huh?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I'm actually mostly done with them. I just need to finish. I don't know. It's one of those things too. Buying a cool model is one thing. It's another to sort of go, well, I bought this model. I need an army to go with it. So. If you bought that Sisters of Battle, and it arrives and you go, I really need to pair this with 2,000 points of army, that might be a problem. That might be an issue.
You're gonna keep talking about my one moment of weakness for the rest of this episode, aren't you?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at Magnus right now going, oh, Magnus, I just don't know when you're going to see the table ever again.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right. So when you're buying models, though, I mean, it's really easy to get a discount on models. Like 20% is pretty much standard. You will find 20% online pretty easily. Occasionally you'll get more than that. You'll see some different sales, but buying straight off the Games Workshop website, unless it's a special edition of some sort you need, which I don't know. I think I bought the special edition Eldar Codex in 7th, and it was really cool, but I don't think I'd ever fall for that again, just because I just don't know that it's worth it, unless you're a super fan. And even then, I don't know. I try to stay away from those as much as I can, because I know that I have purchased special books before, and they're neat in the moment, but I mean, the Eldar sketchbook is something that's awesome. It's beyond awesome, but a set of rules that's going to be outdated in about 2 years, I'm like, I don't know that I would go for a special edition of those ever again. Well,
and those sketchbooks are just kind of to the next level, because you look through those things and there's sketches for perspective units they haven't even made yet.
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's a sketch in there for a Talos the size of a Wraith Knight,
Mm.
you know, and there's there was a sketch of the Webway Gate in there before before the Webway Gate was even released. I mean, I could see why the collector's edition, codex was, attractive,
Mhm.
but one edition later, have you ever looked at it
No,
again?
no, not at all. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you're going to spend big money on a book, how long is this book going to be relevant for? If it's an interesting, like they used to come out with like seasonal books that have kind of like reprints of old stories and old White Dwarf articles. Those are cool, but yeah, 7th edition, special edition Eldar Codex. I think right now I could basically cut it up and make pictures out of it and put it on the wall, but that's about it. So
yeah, and all these special edition models they have coming out, they eventually make them available, just for buying from the general public. Remember when Sly Marbo came out and it was GW store exclusive, and then 6 months later
Yep.
it was on the site and it was ready, it was available for everybody. So if you wait long enough, all these things will become available and at a much cheaper price than the whole special edition rush go get it. Because I don't know if you've seen that Catachan Colonel, that he is being sold for like $200.
Yeah, and in about maybe 6 months to a year, maybe this Christmas, he'll be out again. So you're right, just being patient, because anything that's a special or limited quote unquote edition, if they sell well, they'll come back out again. So being a little patient, because like if I went out and bought a box of models right now, like doesn't matter what it is, I have to ask myself, when am I going to build, paint, and play this thing? And if it's not recently, or I have a recent plan for it, then why do I have to buy it right now? There's no reason to buy this thing right now, because it's just it's not going to hit my painting desk for 6 months. So what's the point? Yeah,
and you said something, Mark, about had to have been like a year ago. You said when you have a box of unbuilt models, you have that box is just kind of unused potential there, and it's just kind of sitting on a shelf, and it's not being utilized for what you paid for in that in that moment when you got it. And if you don't have a plan to use it, then really why get it? Yeah. And yes, I understand that it was silly to buy a Sister of Battle. Okay, I'm never going to use that. But it just all comes back to the same point.
Well, yeah. You know what though? I mean, that was like, it's different. Like if you went out, like I was really tempted to buy the Tau APOC box because I could build the 8 out of it. But then I'm like, when am I going to play Tau? And I don't have any Tau. So this is a long path. This is 1,000 Suns all over again. Sometimes those boxes are great values, but I find they're kind of interesting because like say the Eldar one, I have all that stuff. They had like a Wraith Knight and a bunch of Wraith Guard. I already have all that. So it really was an amazing value for me because I had those things. If it's somebody just getting into an army that you really want to get into, those boxes actually make a lot of sense. They're good values.
They're good values unless it's the Blood of Phoenix box.
Oh my god, that's the worst. It's the worst.
That is the worst box ever. But those Battle Force box, I mean, there's a reason that when there's a reveal around Christmas, what the new Battle Force boxes are, people are very interested to see what's coming out, because those Battle Force boxes are amazing. Yeah. They're great values. And those APOC boxes, they came out, had like one of them, like the Space Marine one, had like 30 intercessors and a like a Redemptor Dreadnought.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's some good stuff. Yeah, some of those are really, really good. And in fact, there's every single one of those big box sets. Usually, you're getting a really good value for them, and it's just you're right. Every Christmas, we both look at it and go, "Oh man," because you just want one that has the exact units that you need to complete an army. Is like the jackpot. Like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah. And as we know, those box sets can be something that is a great value, even if at that time the units in it are kind of, not to mince words, garbage. For example, the Orc Apocalypse box was kind of laughed at because it's a Death Dread, a bunch of Killicans.
Yeah.
If you want to look at some of the worst units in the book, you look at Byrnas and you look at Killicans. But when the Psychic Awakening book came out, Killicans aren't bad anymore.
No.
They're pretty solid now,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of potential there. So even though they might not be good at that point in time, those boxes can really have a great value down the line.
Sure, yeah, and especially if it's your army that you collect and you have a collection of, and it has a bunch of stuff that you need or don't have. Maybe they're not good right now, but you just nowadays 40K changes. The rules change so often. What's good now and what's bad now could change in 6 months. We just don't know.
Sure, yeah.
Now, buying sort of smartly. One of the things I talked about is chasing the meta is kind of a problem, because if you went out and bought 3 Repulsor Executioners when the Marine decks dropped, thinking you're going to run the Iron Hands army, I bought 2 of them thinking, I'll make this really cool Iron Hand Space Marines army. I don't need 2 of those things. That was kind of a problem, actually. So if you're chasing, or no, chasing the meta is not the right word. If you're always looking for the stuff that's good now, and you want to build a list that's good now, in 6 months, by the time you buy, build, and paint all that stuff, it may not be that same. So it's important to kind of focus on like a core of an army. Like, what are the units you need for a list? Like, what's the core of a list that you know won't change no matter what happens? Everything else is kind of, you can play around that. So with Marines, if you're going to start a Marine army, especially with Primaris, you buy a bunch of Intercessors, because you know you'll have Intercessors. You'll have Intercessors, you'll have Infiltrators, you might even have Scouts, who knows? But everything else you can kind of play around with, you can try out. But just kind of focus on that core of that army that you need.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think there's any nice way of putting chase the meta. I mean, there's no way to gussy that up. It's, if you are constantly kind of trying to get the best thing, not only are you going to pay more. So, for example, for a long while there, Assault Centurions or Centurion box in general was impossible to find. GW was sold out of it. You couldn't even find it on eBay. When you did find it, it was marked up 200% or something like that. A box of Centurions that would cost you $50 before the Space Marine book was going to run you about $100. And if you are constantly chasing the meta on stuff that's good, that is known to be good, you are going to pay a lot more and get a lot less, which just decreases your return of enjoyment for your ability to field an army with the units that you want to do. So getting an army, sticking with that army no matter what's good. You can make any army good, unless that army is... I can't even say Grey Knights anymore, because Grey Knights are good. Yeah,
I just don't know that there's too many armies that are kind of down in the dumps that stay there. Because there's always something out there. And really, what do you want to do? I mean, do you want to go top 8 at LVO? Well, there's only about 25 players in the world that consistently can do that, maybe 50. And chances are they don't have a problem because they're borrowing models or they're quickly putting things together. They're getting their hands on the things that they need to build a list they are, but that's not that if that most of us don't do that.
And if your army is not great and you are, you feel that it's, underpowered, don't sell it. Okay.
No.
Wait. Especially in 8th edition, now where you get a Psychic Awakening book or, a campaign book that completely turns it on its head. Sisters of Battle are really, really good now. Like people are talking about Sisters of Battle being like a 1 or a 1A level army right now. There's just not a lot of people that have those armies, that army right now. Grey Knights is a 1A army right now. Don't sell it, because as soon as you sell it, you are getting a percentage. Usually, 99% of the time, you're getting, 60% of what you put into it, which is that 40% you'll never see again.
Yeah. If you have a box of models that you haven't even opened, it's worth probably about 35% off of the retail price, because most people can buy them 20 to 30%. Maybe not 30. If you try to sell it locally, you can get it for about 70% of the retail price, and maybe that's about what you paid for it or not. unless it's a hot model, unless it's something everyone wants and it's really popular right now. So you can play kind of the market in 40K if you like, but for the most part, you're not getting what you spent on that, no matter what you do.
Yeah, and I mean, with the caveat, unless you really dislike the way that army plays,
Sure.
If you have like a full like Khorne army and you just hate close combat, I mean, go for it. If you're tired of not having friends, sell that Tau army, okay? Sorry, but please try not to sell your armies, because there will be a time that comes back around.
Yeah.
If you are going to sell it to Trader A, though. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, TraderA.com. If you are looking at trying out new units, rather than, and this is what we do with our league, our local league, we actually people can proxy. And proxy is basically, you're taking another model that's like roughly the same size and you're trying it out. And so when I was playing AdMech, the Scorpius disintegrator tanks had come out and I wasn't sure if I wanted to run them. So I was using like a Rhino, like a little bit larger size of a Rhino. And I put something on top of it that it kind of fit the profile. It was a little bit smaller, wasn't perfect. But when you're kind of proxying and you're just playing with things, sometimes it's nice to have an environment where you can try things out before you go out and you buy it and you build it and you paint it and realize, I hate this model, or I don't like the rules, or it's not doing for me what I thought it would do, or everyone online says this is great, I can't make it work. So sometimes it's nice to proxy things, to just try them out. Don't make it a habit. I mean, if you're proxying the same thing for, months, at some point you probably just need to buy the model. But it's good to try things out, and it's good to have friends that maybe let you try things out just to kind of take it for a spin, or maybe even borrow a model from somebody just to try it out. So sometimes trying out a model it's like test driving it. Like, knowing that you're going to have to put the time and effort to build and paint this thing. Is it worth it? And sometimes test driving a model is actually really a cool idea to determine, hey, this might not be something I really want to spend money on. Yeah,
because I mean, a great example of that is, Mark, I don't think you have any Dragoons, do you? You don't have any Sidonian Dragoons?
I don't, no.
Yeah, because those puppies are what, like $50 a piece?
Yeah, they are spendy.
And you can take them in large units.
Yeah.
And you might want to proxy, that unit of, 7 or 8 that, that get bandied around. Yeah. Proxy that to see if that fits with your playstyle, if that's something you enjoy playing, that's something that's viable before you go and blow $350, $400 on one unit.
Yep. Because you saw somebody play it and you're like, oh, that's really cool.
And proxying, depending on who you're playing against, it can get really primitive. I will be the first one to admit I have played some of my teammates who wanted to test out armies. Their armies were a bunch of cardboard bases cut out in the approximate dimensions of said unit. Sure. And we played like that. Yeah. And it's fine. It is just a smart thing to do to make sure that that's exactly what what you want to play with. Yeah. I mean, example, like an Incarn, like playing with an Incarn, it seems like a fun thing in like principle to play with an Incarn. It is there's a reason you don't see them a ton. Yeah. It's because it is your brain short circuits. Yeah. Playing an Incarn.
You say you have to have the hands of a surgeon to play the Incarn.
The hands of a surgeon and the mind of Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, because you have to think about 3 or 4 turns ahead with some of this stuff, and you have to get sequencing of your other units exactly right. Yeah, but you probably want to proxy that before you go, down that line of getting a triumvirate of you need and things like that. Yeah,
sure. So. Yeah, I mean, I've let people borrow armies before, and I've let I have borrowed some pieces and parts from other people. It's just a good thing to get it. It's good to try it out, because if you just buy things because somebody said, hey, why don't you try this out, and then you just don't like it, that's the worst, because then it just sits there. You may finish it, you may put it on your shelf, or like worse, you may build it and then get some primer on it, and then you rush out and you start playing with it, and then you realize you don't like it, or you don't like it doesn't fit what you want, and then you have this painted, poorly painted or just really rudimentarily painted thing that is worth maybe 40% of its value that you spent time and money on. It's just sitting there, and you're like, I don't really want to play with this thing anymore.
Yeah, and if if you don't have the ability to proxy it or test it out, go on to your faction Facebook group and just kind of ask those people like, hey guys, what do you think about this unit and that unit? And I mean, you will get varying opinions from across the the spectrum, but it usually regresses to a mean, and there will be kind of a common theme of, well, it's a bit overcosted for what it does, or well, it tends to die quickly in most matchups, and don't really think I get the bang for the buck as far as points go. So
yeah. That another way to do 40K on a budget is just in general is to have low model count armies, because some armies are just a lot cheaper than others. So a Custodes army is so much more cheaper than, let's say, a Genestealer Cult army, which I think Genestealer Cult army has to take it's got to be one of the most expensive armies out there, because it's all expensive boxes of infantry. But Custodes, because it's an elite army, you don't really need to spend that much money to get a Custodes army kind of pulled together.
No.
And I think that Knight box set is one of the great. It was the Renegade box set. It had a Crusader, the full Crusader kit, and then it had like an Errant and Paladin, and it was a 2-Knight box set with terrain. And the great thing about that, I don't remember how much it was. It was like, I don't know, half the cost of it was almost like getting a knight for free, basically, the way it was all worked out. But 2 knights is a half your army list, and so this one box you could have a two knights on a halfway to a full knight army. And so having knights, for example, or those really big centerpiece models, especially if you can get good deals on them, it actually goes a long way. They're a lot of points in a list, but they're also huge. And yeah, they can be kind of expensive, but if you can get good deals on them, they're really on a point per dollar basis, they're really, really cheap.
That's why I think the Knight Codex kind of made its presence known quickly, because it's easy to get like a Knight or a Castellan or something like that bam. But the Orc book took a while to kind of show itself. The Genestealer Cult book took a while to show itself, because not a lot of people have that many.
Just don't. Yeah,
like the 100 Orc boys and the 90 Gretchen that was required to make that thing kind of go in the early days. So yeah, it's those bigger centerpiece models. You really do get a lot for your money with those things, because they eat up a lot of points, and that's one big model that you need to convert, that you need to build and base and paint instead of 100 Acolyte hybrids.
Yep. Yeah. And a Knight army is three of the medium ones, and then a couple smaller ones, and that's it can be kind of expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a Genestealer Cult army. And actually, it's a lot easier to paint because they're big, huge, chunky models, and you can put a lot of effort to make them look really nice. But I actually think Custodes, because once you get your metallics kind of looking good, a Custodes army actually isn't that expensive. And you can actually get built and painted and finished pretty quickly. And if it's something that interests you, they're actually kind of a pretty cool low model count army that you can get in kind of on a budget and also finish pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you stay completely Games Workshop, Custodes can be very, very efficient money wise. I mean, once you get down the Forge World rabbit hole with all their grab tanks and their 2 flyers, you might need to sell a kidney or two to do that. But it's a good way of getting your foot in the door with the game. Yeah,
that's a good point. And actually, Forge World is where things get way off the rails. I remember the first time I first got into the game, like 5th edition, end of 5th, early 6th. And I had heard of what Forge World was, and I remember typing in and finding the website. And this is before Games Workshop and Forge World were really like super closely connected. And I remember looking through the Forge World prices and just being blown away. Like, are they kidding? They're not kidding. The shoulder pads they cost that much for, and maybe I'm getting older now and the prices don't affect me as much. I've just been used to it, but Forge World is really expensive. And so once you start dipping your toe into that, that's when you're no longer 40K'ing on a budget. then you're spending big money at that point.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Now let's talk about converting units, and this is something you do, Matt. A lot of times it's easier and cheaper to convert a unit than buy a brand new unit. And also, when you're converting units, it makes your army it makes it unique to you. Games Workshop, because a lot of their kits are different multi-part kits. You can convert along different model lines of Games Workshop. So we were just talking before we got started here, like Eldar. There's so much good Age of Sigmar elf line stuff. There's a lot of really cool conversion opportunities just without even having to go outside of Games Workshop.
Yeah. And I mean, I am a terrible example of converting for cost effectiveness. I'm the worst at that. I mean, if you'd see my orc army, I have 90 boys, and each one of those boys has robotic legs and a robotic arm from third-party bedsites and stuff like that. It's not cheaper than just building normal boys. I have a Gene Stealer cult abominant that was converted into a weird boy that was quite a bit more than a weird boy. But if you do it not like I do and do it smartly,
Mhm.
you can do it. You can save a lot of money. So I mean, for example, Dark Eldar are kind of the ones that come to mind. If you want to run grotesques as Dark Eldar,
Mm-hmm.
GW for some reason, grotesques are often run big units of 10, but each grotesque comes solo, and it's a mono pose fine cast model, and they each cost about $25-$30, and that's a lot. For those of us doing the math at home, you're looking at a good $25 or $250 to $300 just for a unit of grotesques.
Oh, that look terrible, honestly.
They're-
Or they just look the same.
They're awful.
Yeah.
I mean, they are awful. There are, because of this, there's so many great grotesque conversions out there. I personally use the Isle of Blood Rat Ogres.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit big base size, but you can fit them on the bases just fine. You just put tallow spits on some of those bad boys,
Yep.
and bam, you got a stew going. You got grotesques. There's the Skaven Storm Fiends also make good grotesques.
Yeah, the Skaven ones. Yeah, the large rat things.
With
Yeah.
the gun arms with like the mini guns in their
Mm-hmm.
arms. There's Crypt Fiends.
Yeah.
There's a few different ones that are really great conversions. There's even I've seen some decent racks converted into grotesques using tallow spits. It's great. When you really want to get your bang for your buck, you go to orcs because
Yep.
there's a widely used conversion out there for getting mech guns, because mech guns themselves are about $55 or $60 a piece,
Mm-hmm.
and you can field 18 of those things quickly.
Yeah.
If you go on YouTube, there's a really easy way of taking a single mech gun kit and a truck kit,
Mm.
and you can turn that into 4 mech guns.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Now, I've looked at it and well, I'd want to make 3 mech guns out of it because the last one at the end kind of looks like the stepbrother that really doesn't belong to the family. But still, you're taking, to be honest, truck kits are really cheap. They're everywhere because you don't see them fielded, but they're super easy to find used, and you get a mech gun kit, and that's what maybe $80, and you, instead of spending $180 for 3 or 4 of those mech guns. So there's little tricks you can do with that to just kind of convert out and make your dollars spread a little bit further.
Yeah, and we should also say too that one of the things you need to, if you're not doing already, and I think most hobbyists are, but if you're not, you need to save all your bits. It doesn't even matter what you're doing, what you're building. Save the bits for your army. It feels weird sometimes, and then over time you'll grow to have a massive collection of just bits from. I have a bunch of chaos bits from the Thousand Sons army that I, stalled out on. But save those bits, because those bits are the things that you will be able to use later to do these kinds of conversions. So, there may be some special character that. So, for example, Admech has Daedalosus, who came in what did he come in? He came in like a Blackstone Fortress.
Blackstone Fortress.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not going to buy the Blackstone Fortress kit when I can easily convert one based on, like, I think I had a Forge World Engine Seer that I had purchased anyway. And I'm like, I'll just convert him and I'll give him some of the same, weapons that he has. AdMech are easily converted because they just look weird anyways, and they're all kind of unique. So there you have it. And I didn't have to go out and buy this thing. I didn't have to buy the Blackstone Fortress box that had a bunch of stuff I wasn't going to use. And also, I didn't have to try eBay to try to find this thing, because usually when people split these things up, it can be kind of expensive. So,
yeah, it can get expensive real quick. And I mean, even if you have bits that like, there's no way I'm ever going to use this. I think I was making my Shining Spears, I think, and I needed some bits, some Harlequin bits to finish them up, and I didn't have any Harlequin bits, but I had a bunch of Raider sales, and somebody in our community really wanted Raider sales, and she had a bunch of Harlequin bits, and hey,
yep.
like we got a good old trade a brewing,
Yep.
There's every once in a while in our community we have bit swaps where we kind of get together and can swap, bring our bits tins out and swap bits, and it's really fun, and it's a way to make sure you don't have to pay that I don't know, $5 for a Dark Eldar blaster that those things go for, or like $10 for a Thunder Hammer or things like that. You can just here's a Raider sale, for a fusion gun type thing.
And the Harlequin fusion guns were really expensive for a while, but there's a easy conversion to do Harlequin fusion guns, or there are third-party sites that sell bits that are just sell pieces and parts and weapons and things that you can use. So, rather than buy, I don't know, multiple troop box. So here's the thing that GW does a lot of is and everyone knows this. The boxes have the options to build more, but there's always a couple things in there that are the limiters. And usually it's like the legs. The legs are always the limiters in that they only have 5 sets of legs, but they may have 10 different torsos or 20 different arms or a bunch of different weapons. And so if you were going to buy a troop unit of Harlequins, for example, and give them all fusion guns, you'd have to buy, I don't remember how many fusion guns come in a box of troops, but you have to buy...
It's like 2.
Like 2, yeah. So you'd end up buying like 5 boxes just to fill out the 2 units of 5 fusion gun troops you want to have, because you maybe want to run them in a Skyweaver and you want to go drive-by shooting with the fusion guns. So you have to buy a lot, and then you end up having a bunch of stuff left over. So sometimes buying the bits individually, like off of eBay, if they're not too expensive, is not a bad idea. But sometimes there's third parties that can help you kind of convert up, not maybe just a model, but even just a piece of a model that makes it a little cheaper. Sorry.
Yeah, and there's BitSwap Facebook groups that exist as well. That if you can always use that
for sure. So now eBay is it's eBay, right? So you don't really know what you're getting, but eBay you can get some very good deals on eBay. You can also get some junk, right? So you could buy models, or you can buy new stuff off eBay. So a lot of sellers, you can get 20% discount really easy just by going to eBay, because there's a lot of just people that just sell models. Like it's part of their business. But you could also buy used models off of eBay. You can find some good deals, but you can also, it's very easy to buy, let's say you buy an army lot, and the army lot is, it's got all this stuff, and it seems like a good deal because it's got all the stuff. But when you get it, that army lot may be really poorly painted. It may have about 4 or 5 layers of paint on it. It may be something you can't save. So it may be poorly built too. So you may be buying literal junk. You have to be kind of careful about buying and selling off of eBay, just because you have to recognize that the descriptions are not always going to be accurate. What they say is pro-painted may or may not be accurate. You got to look really closely at the pictures to see, okay, is this worthwhile, or is this something that, I don't know, this isn't going to work out.
If you are willing to strip models, preferably not fine cast models, because fine cast models do not like to be stripped nearly as well as plastic and metal models do. you can really, really find some deals on eBay, because there are some terribly painted models that people just don't want to buy.
Yeah.
And if you are willing to have it sit in a bucket of degreaser for a few days, or run it through, I run those models through an ultrasonic cleaner that I use to clean my airbrush, and the paint falls off within 3 minutes.
Metal models especially, yeah.
Oh yeah. Then if you're willing to do something like that, just go the extra mile. You can get some really good deals on eBay.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I do a lot of is magnetizing. Now, I don't magnetize infantry models. There's limits. I've done it before. When I first started out, I had when I tried to build a Marine Army the first time, I had their jump packs magnetized because I didn't want to. I wanted to save a little money, and you could buy the jump packs separately. So I wanted to have an assault squad that I could, switch back and forth. You can magnetize infantry, but at some point it becomes really, really, really fussy. So
and it can become expensive too.
Yeah,
I mean, an example. I challenge our listeners. Please point out a model, like the worst model that you've ever had to magnetize. I will start off, with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, magnetizing Wraith Guard to go between Wraith Blades and Wraith Guard.
Ugh, gosh.
You're using itty bitty, teeny tiny magnets for the sword arms and the sword hands and the shield, and then you need to be able to. Oh man, it's bad.
Yep.
That is a test insanity right there. Never again. Never ever again.
No. It seemed like a good idea, right? Because that Wraith kit, the Wraith Guard kit, you can do either D-sights or Wraith cannons or Wraith blades or the axes and shields. There's 4 different types of, and the sucky thing is you build it, and once you build it as one, you're essentially locking yourself out of the other 3 options. If you want the other 3 options, and you have to go out and buy 3 more boxes of those, then you have all these bits kind of just lying around that it feels like a waste in some respects. And so I get it why you're probably like, oh, I want to use every single bit on this sprue.
Yeah.
But at some point it's expensive. And it's also just a pain. It's a lot of work.
It's a huge pain. And it needs to be said that there's an upfront investment that's required for doing these sorts of magnetization and things like that. You're going to need a pin vise. You're going to need, the little drill. You're going to need to buy the magnets, and you can get those magnets for fairly cheap these days from, magnet wholesalers and things like that. It is a lot of time.
Yep.
It while it sounds silly, polarity of magnets can be a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Being able to get that thing in that little itty bitty pin vise hole that you've just drilled and be able to get it on the exact polarity that you need it to be on the right side, because sometimes those things flip around between it leaving your finger and it going into that pin vise hole, and it can be really frustrating. And it's a learning curve.
Yep.
But it can, as the old battle host John Capson, for those of you that remember John Capson, used to say, magnetizing is the best way to future-proof your army and your models.
For sure. And I have, there are some things that are definitely worth taking the time to magnetize. So, for example, the Wraith Knight. The Wraith Knight, the arms, the kit's actually really easy to magnetize if you get a large enough magnet for those arms, because it comes with all 4 different variations of arms, and one of the weapon arms you can swap to a sun cannon for a Wraith cannon. So just by magnetizing the arms and also magnetizing the shoulder cannons, you can build all 4 variants and magnetize it pretty easily. And it's worth it because it's a huge kit that you really don't want to own 3 different Wraith Knights. You want one that you can sort of swap the weapons around in. Because not only does it save you money, it saves you time, because you only have to build and paint it once, and you have to build and paint the accessories once, and that's it. And everything else is magnetized.
Yeah, and magnetization is also a way of stopping breakage when you're moving it.
Like Dark Eldar Raider sails,
Raider sails. You are crazy if you don't magnetize those Raider sails. Yep. And the Ravager, the side sponson guns, those things will briggity break if you do not magnetize them. But there are some tricky ones, like building a Wraith Lord the other day, and the shoulders for the different shoulder mounted weapons, those to me seemed a little bit small to put magnets in. How did you do yours, Mark?
Yeah, so they have there's the peg, and then they have this little like a cap.
Mhm.
And in that cap there's like a little slot. And what I did was I took a drill and the same width of the magnet, and I drilled it in it, so it kind of dug out a space to put the magnet, because and it wasn't, the magnet didn't put into the slot, the hole kind of basically created a space for the magnet, so it went outside of that little slot. And then I used the same size on the weapon. So but yeah, I mean a Wraithlord, for example, and I actually magnetized the ghost glaives for the fist as well. And it wasn't horrible. It was because it's a bigger, chunkier piece. But I've been doing it long enough that it's still a pain in the butt. Magnetization, you can do a lot of it. It's still a pain, but it's worth it on some kits for sure, like the Wraithlord, for example.
Yeah, and if magnets aren't really in your budget, or not within your
skill,
your limits of sanity, pinning is also always an option, because you just get paper clips, and I ended up pinning those guns onto that Wraithlord's shoulders, because pins just seemed like it was a bit easier, a bit cleaner.
Yeah,
that's always an option.
Yep, I think at the very least, think about. Especially for vehicles, if there's multiple options, for example, the Repulsor Executioner, the Plasma versus Laser Destroyer, that's a really easy magnetization. It's just a big magnet for the turret gun, and if you do nothing else, that's worth magnetizing. So something as simple as that.
Rhinos and Razorbacks are another good example.
Yeah, that's just pulling one thing off and putting another thing on. So when it's easy to magnetize. When it gets a little trickier to magnetize, there are, I actually go out and look at a lot of YouTube videos on how to magnetize things, because I wanted to magnetize the Stormhawk, the Storm Talon to Stormhawk. That was, oh my God, it's a pain. That is a pain.
It's a rough one.
That's a rough one. I got there, but it's a pain. And that one I had to do some research on that, because I couldn't figure that out myself. So that one was tricky. Yeah. But there's easy things to magnetize, and if it's easy enough to do it, you probably should consider doing it, so you're not wasting money buying multiple kits. So, all right, let's talk hobby supplies, because not all hobby supplies are created equal. Some things are required, some are optional. The quality really does vary depending on what you want. So there are some things you can kind of really go cheap on. There's others you maybe want to spend a little money on. When you're spending this much money on models, you want to ensure, though, that you can build and paint them to kind of the standard you have in mind. We both know players, and there's some people that just don't like painting, right? I mean, I get that, but we see them show up with gray plastic models, and then more gray plastic models, and then more gray plastic models, and it just feels like at some point why don't you stop and paint these things? It might slow down your purchases of buying models if you take the time to paint them. So the things you need to build, you need clippers. You don't need to buy GW clippers, but you need clippers, sprue clippers. You need a hobby knife, and you don't need to buy the GW hobby knife. These are, you can go to any hobby store and get like X-Acto knives, and just get hobby knives. And like, I have a little wooden case that has the knives, and I just replace the knives. It's not that expensive. And then you can get glue. Again, you don't need to get GW glue. I use Tester's plastic glue, and for super glue, I use, what do I use? Oh, I use a Loctite glue. And
it's the best one, the controlled one with the squeezy one.
Yeah, and it's funny, because I think there was one time it was a Black Friday sale, and you're like, hey, Home Depot has a sale on the Loctite super glue.
Yeah. So they had like 6 of them in a bundle for like $5 or something. Like, go.
Yeah.
It will literally 5 of these will last us maybe a month.
Yeah, I know, because of all the magnetization. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's totally worth it. It's not like they're going to go bad, and you're going to use every single one of those things.
Oh yeah.
But Games Workshop makes a couple things that are nice, but honestly, I would not buy hobby supplies from Games Workshop. The only thing that I have found that I like that they have, and this is sort of an optional thing, is those dumb the holders, the paint handles,
the painting handles.
Those things are actually
what about
pretty
the
useful.
painting? What about the painting handle that has the the arms that will like hold things in place for when they're glued.
You know, I haven't tried that, but I think that actually would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
I feel like that might be.
they're pretty great.
Yeah,
they're pretty great.
Versus sitting. So those paint handles are probably, to me, if there's one hobby thing you're going to buy from Games Workshop, definitely those are the things, because it's very unique and it's a very cool product. Everything else is just a knockoff of. There's other people that make better products for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the optional things you might want, you can get sanding paper really, really cheap. You can go buy special model sanding paper, but you can go to the hardware store and get really, really, really fine sanding paper for a much cheaper price. Files, and then I don't know. Do you use mold line removers? Like scrapers?
I use the back of my hobby knife.
That's
the back of your hobby knife is just as good as any mold line scraper I've ever used.
That's kind of what I do too.
Yeah, it's a hard, straight surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then to paint, first of all, everyone kind of has a different idea around brushes. And when you're first starting off, just start with some basic brushes. You don't even have to buy Games Workshop brushes. I think that Army Painter makes some decent beginner brushes. I wouldn't go to the hobby store and buy super cheap synthetic brushes. I would try to get something kind of decent. When I say hobby store, I mean like Hobby Lobby. Go really, really cheap. But I think at some point when you start to paint, I have a couple cheap brushes for certain things, but once I started looking at Kolinsky Sable brushes, they are expensive and there's a couple different brands. But once you start painting with those, I really find I need those to feel like I can paint the way I want to paint. So
well, they just keep a tip better than anything else that I've seen. I mean, if you're like base coating things with a brush, I mean, you don't need like a $10, $20 brush to base coat things. I mean, you can use your standard hobby store brush, within reason, that's, not 100 years old, but I'm with you. I'm not the best painter in the world, but there's just an extra level of control when you're using these nicer brushes that can keep a point. Yep.
Yeah. Artis Opus, Winsor Newton, Raphael, basically they're all Kolinsky Red Sable brushes. Size 1 or 2. You don't need a complete set. You only need like 2 or 3, maybe 3, but usually I can get by with just a couple. Because they hold a point, you don't need a tiny, tiny little brush because the point is there. So you could get just a couple of these really expensive brushes. And like you said, you don't have to use them for everything, but there are some things you want to do where you want a nice brush. So it's one of those things where, if you buy a nice brush and you buy brush soap, like the Masters brush cleaner, not getting a nice brush is something, maybe ask for like a birthday or a Christmas present or something as kind of a treat, an interesting, a fun treat that you get, because you don't have to buy it very often. You buy it once and it'll last you years, but it's a bit of a splurge because it's, it costs a little bit of money, but it will make your painting much more enjoyable. And so for me, I find it's worth it to spend a little money on decent brushes.
Those good brushes, they might be expensive, with an upfront cost, but if you take care of them, they'll last you forever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those hobby store brushes, they're not really designed to stay around.
No. Nope. Now, primer. What do you use for primer? What do you prime with?
It depends what I prime. It depends completely what I'm priming. If I am priming terrain for table or priming bases, it's usually pretty cheap primer that I'm using. You need to be careful though to make sure it doesn't glob in anything, especially if it's cheap primer. But I'm in your camp, Mark. If I need something primed well and I need to be 100% sure that it primes well, I just use GW black primer. There's something in it that it just goes on smoother. I don't know what it is.
I tried Army Painter once, and Army Painter primer, I know people swear by it, and I used red primer, and it was for a Blood Angel army, and I used that red primer, and I couldn't get it to work, and it just blasted out the details, and I think it was because I was so used to using GW, which doesn't have as much, as much color in it. But switching to different brands, I've tried different brands of primer, and they just, for some reason, they don't seem as easy for me to use. And there's nothing worse than ruining a model at like the priming stage.
Yeah, and Army Painter primer is not for beginners
Mm.
for sure. Because I mean, I've clumped up a model with too much primer. Sometimes I haven't shaken the can enough, and it kind of sprays out in a clump, and it's
Mhm.
gritty, and like, well, time to dunk it and try again.
Yep.
You dunk it, you wait a few hours, you pull it out, let it dry, and you try again. You don't get that with Army Painter, because
Mhm.
Army Painter primer, it is absorbed into the plastic or the
Yeah.
fine cast. That model is red
Yep. Forever. Yes, it is.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that there are people that I'm not bashing it because I know people have success with it. I just know that I didn't. And I'm a little superstitious about primers. And so if you have found a primer that works for you, and I know that there are some people that have, there's a store, this automotive store sells this brand of primer that I think is really great, or there's some whatever works is great. But I find that Games Workshop primers are expensive, but I feel that I need to spend the money on those because I just don't trust any other kinds of primers, honestly.
Vallejo primer through an airbrush is pretty okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had pretty good results with the Vallejo primer through my airbrush. Now, the problem is you have to clean your airbrush after that.
Yep.
And that's not fun, cleaning primer out of an airbrush.
No, but you're right. I mean, if you have an airbrush, it does make, and it's easier to prime too, because you can prime it in all weather. You don't have to wait. Because if you're priming outside and the conditions are a little bit off, you can kind of mess your models up a little bit too. So now talking about paint, now here's the one thing that everyone starts with Games Workshop paints. And if you watch those tutorials, let's say you want to paint, it doesn't matter, like the wood elf, like there's a tutorial on a Harlequin, for example. And they start to go, oh, now I'm using this paint, and now I'm using this paint, and now I'm using, there's 10 pots of paint for a single model that they use, like 10 different pots for, I use this paint for this highlight for this one tiny thing. If you go out and do that and buy all those, that's a lot of paint for a single model, or even a series of models. So you really don't need to buy that much Games Workshop paint, because the tutorials are there to help you, but they're also there to push more paint. And I have made those mistakes. I have paint that I bought once because I saw a tutorial. I've used it maybe twice, and I don't really ever touch it again because it was, let's use this highlight pink for the eye lens. And I mean, I don't paint enough eye lenses, and then the pot just sits there, and eventually it goes to crap. So
it's because Duncan used his sweet words when he was painting his Incarn to get you to buy all these paints.
He did, yeah, and that Incarn tutorial is really, really good too.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to buy that much. Honestly, especially if you're brand new and you're kind of doing it on a budget. A couple different colors for base coating, and then maybe a wash, and then maybe lighter colors for dry brush. But you can always make paint lighter by mixing it with like a white or like a different kind of a lighter shade of whatever that color is. You can do different things with smaller color palettes. And so don't feel you need to buy the entire range of Games Workshop paints. And I know that contrast paints are really, really good in some uses, but those are expensive paints. And like Matt, you're using for small areas where you're really making it work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. There are not, and they will all. I mean, even GW I think will say this, and everybody that uses them will say this. Not all contrast paints are alike. There are some that are really, really, really good, and there are some that are just not worth using. There's some that are basically like staples, like their Black Templar. Their black is just amazing, and their Basilica Gray, which is great for metals and things like that. And there's a great one for leather bags and things like that. But then there's some really trash ones too. Yeah. They Colin put it best, and he only needed to watch somebody paint with them once, I think, to say like they're a good tool for the toolbox. They're not a replacement for painting. Yeah,
and you said it interesting. You said something really good there, that the different colors of paints are different quality. I have never found a Games Workshop white that is any good. Like, I hate their white paints. So just because Games Workshop has some good paints, it doesn't mean all their paints are good. And one of my favorite paints to go to is Vallejo. The problem with Vallejo is they're not always easy to find. Not every store can stock them. I've found that I've heard they're not as easy to stock their paints, but if you can find a store that sells Vallejo paints, and of course you can go online too, but it's nice to buy locally if you can. Vallejo quality is really, they have a lot of different range of paints. Try to explore some of their paints because they have a dropper bottle, which means that you're not wasting paint. Because the GW pot, I feel like I get what they're trying to go for, where you can kind of open it up and you can use a little lid there to kind of get some paint on there. But I think sometimes it's a little too cute by half, and oftentimes the lid gets kind of like half open, and then the paint basically dries out before you're done with it. So.
And then they keep building the pots taller and taller so that you're more likely to knock them over.
Yep, pretty much that too. Yeah. So I like Vallejo paints. Also, Privateer Press. They make War Machine, but their P3 paints are very good. And there's some I think Scale 75 I haven't tried, but they make very good. I've heard they make good metallics. But try to look at other paints. To me, definitely explore Vallejo as an alternative set of paints that you may want to try for some of your projects. I don't think they're necessarily cheaper than Games Workshop. But they have dropper bottles. They last a little bit longer, and sometimes they're just better. Some of the colors, they just have better color, better quality.
Yeah, and again, you're not gonna with Vallejo. I mean, I don't know if the amount of paint in each container is the same, but anybody who's used Citadel GW paints knows that quite a bit of your paint is wasted.
Yep.
Because it dries around the back of the lid there.
Yep.
It can even dry up so much to where your lid doesn't close all the way.
Yep, got a bunch of those. Yep.
Yeah, and that means air's getting in and even more paint's evaporating.
Yep.
Pretty
much.
And even when it's, quote unquote time, it's at the end of that pot, there's a bunch of paint left on the walls of that thing that you cannot get out. And if you want to see some people that are gluttons for punishment, there are videos on YouTube on how to transfer your GW paints to Vallejo style bottles, dropper bottles. That is a labor of love right there.
And I just don't see the point of that. I mean, there are some colors that GW has that's great, but to me, I mean, just buy Vallejo at that point. I mean, what are you doing? Just buy Vallejo at that point. One of the things you absolutely should not do is go to a craft store and buy like the cheap paints, like the Apple Barrel acrylic paints. Those are like craft paints. Those are fine for terrain, and I use that for terrain, like big chunks of terrain. But the pigments in that craft paint, they're not fine enough for the scale that we're working on. So those will be, they just won't work. They'll break down too quickly. They're okay for large, chunky projects, and I've seen them for really, really large things. But even just terrain, it's fine. But don't buy the cheap craft store paints and expect that it's going to work for the GW models. At that point, you need to start spending money on Games Workshop or Vallejo or Privateer Press paints, because that's the kind of stuff that's built for the scale models that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think when it comes to hobbying on a budget, pick a simple paint job, 3 to 4 colors in a wash, maybe dry brush. You really, if you can make do with about 4 or 5 pots of paint or bottles of paint, then do that. And you can always go back and add more detail later, but don't overbuy on paints. Just buy the paint you need to paint what you have. Paint prices don't go up, and then you might run out in the middle of a project. Okay, that's one thing, but unless you're a commissioned painter, you can always wait to go to the store tomorrow. So there's no reason to buy paints ahead of time. You just buy the paints you need. When you run out, go buy more. There's always going to be some more out there.
And, going out for one pot of paint, it's always the old adage of that's when impulse buying happens.
It's dangerous. Yep. I've got to go out tomorrow and get a pot of paint, and I'm already going, I wonder what kind of... I'm like, no, can't do it. I got to stop myself, because I think the non-essential retail stores are opening tomorrow, and I actually am out of a particular pot of paint. So it's actually really nice to finish a pot of paint, because I actually got my money's worth out of this entire pot of paint.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't think anybody's ever said that about a GW paint, because there's just so much left in there at the end of the day.
Yep, for sure. Now, in airbrush, should you invest in an airbrush? This is something that we have an entire episode on demystifying an airbrush. And the answer is an airbrush will save you time. It will help bring some larger pieces to life. It will improve a lot of the stuff that you're looking to improve. And it's a great tool to learn, but it's expensive and takes a lot of time to learn. And so to me, it's like, it's a commitment, and you have to remember, okay, I'm going to now invest in an airbrush. A decent setup is going to run you about $300-400.
Yep.
And then all the time to learn that. And then of course we went out and bought like ultrasonic cleaners and all the different accessories and things to help the airbrush work better. And it in itself costs money for sure.
Yeah. I mean, buying an airbrush, I mean, you can pick up a master airbrush kit on Amazon for like $100. I would say that's a great starter, airbrush, to see if this is really something that, you want to do. It's great for like base coating and things like that. I wouldn't do much more than that with that level of airbrush, but you would need, a better compressor and, learning how to clean them. Those ultrasonic cleaners that we got are just magicians. They save so much time, but they are not just like money intensive. Airbrushes are time intensive things to have. Sure. I mean, I have to make a new batch of airbrush cleaning fluid out of, Glass Plus and deionized water and alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. Every once in a while, you have to have this extra little stuff around to make those things worse. And Mark and I both have these little itty bitty, airbrush booths on our hobby desks that have fans on them, so that you're venting those fumes out to a more safe area than your house. And then there's these little pots that you use for cleaning them that you spray the water into, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding and adding.
It adds up. So assume that at some point you're going to spend about $400 to $500, all told, over a course of time, because the first time you get an airbrush, you might screw the needle up, you might bend it accidentally, you may have to go out and get another part for it. I mean, you're going to be rough on your airbrush to begin with. So, yeah, investing in an airbrush, to me, it's not something you do if you're looking to hobby on a budget. It is a commitment and takes some time, and it will save you a little bit of time, but it's not budget $40K. You're committed to the hobby at that point. I mean, that's going out and getting the expensive set of golf clubs, to play the game.
But once you do it and you know how to airbrush decently, you will never go back.
Nope.
Ever.
Nope. That's true. That is true. Once you do it, you sort of pass that threshold, and there you go. Now, one of the things that I think one of the big themes about 40K on a budget is don't buy what you can't use. And so the things you're making these intentional purchase decisions, and investing in an airbrush is something that obviously you have to spend some time and do some research. And again, listen to our episode on demystifying the airbrush. We'll walk you through everything that you need to know. There's a lot of groups out there that will help you out. The question is always like, what kind of airbrush should I get? You're going to get a bunch of different answers. Just know that it's going to cost some money and take a lot of time to learn it. Now let's end with terrain. And we've talked about models, we talked about building and painting the models, but game stores have terrain, but you at some point may want to build your own terrain. And this is where I think you can get really, really cheap. If you're crafty and you're a little clever and you can go out and find some stuff, you can take foam core, or you can take like the insulating foam. You can take old cans. You can take any piece of styrofoam that's laying around the house. This is where you can get cheap and creative and build like ridiculous things that look good once you throw some paint on it. Dry brush with some cheap craft paint. This is where I think terrain, you can make good looking terrain for not a lot of money. And I think this is where you can really make a budget table. You can really put it together, a nice 40K table, without going out and buying the Games Workshop, Sector Mechanicus set, or, whatever the Ruins set they have. There's you can buy lots of MDF terrain out there. You can customize the terrain. You can add different things to the terrain to make it look interesting. Terrain, I think, is really more about being clever because it's such a large scale, and you're really just trying to be functional with it, that you can go really cheap with terrain and have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and the we're talking about like a step above, being a step above cardboard. Because I think that's the base right there. Playing with cardboard terrain. Oh, brother.
Yeah.
MDF is kind of a lot of people kind of poo-poo about MDF. If you use the right primer on MDF, because there's a special primer for it, it's called filler primer. Because if anybody who's tried to prime or paint MDF, just kind of watch it in real time. You will spray like a piece of like bare MDF. If you spray it with just normal spray paint or normal primer, you will actively see the wood absorb that primer. And the primer just disappears. Like the wood has eaten the primer. And you're like, what just happened? Like, that's not supposed to happen. There's a special primer called filler primer made for it, where it doesn't absorb it nearly as much, and it fills it up to make it a nice smooth surface to where you can paint it, and that MDF looks a lot like plastic or something else. And you can make, and MDF is cheap because it's easy to make now with all the laser cutters that they have going around, and you can get a really nice set of MDF terrain for like $25 if you look hard enough for it.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, if you want to even go cheaper, you can buy the laser cut stuff that's pre-done. You can get foam core and just build things, and I think I made a bunch of hills out of that, the insulated styrofoam, where you just kind of cut it out and you glue it together, and you throw some dirt on there and some paint or some Elmer's glue, and there's a lot of like all the way up to MDF. You can build lots of really cool stuff, and I think this is where a lot of people can have a lot of fun with the hobby, and also go, like I said, go really cheap with it.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break, and let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderA.com. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. TraderA is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that TraderA gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, so I am interviewing Aaron Albert, who is also known as Trader A, who is a good friend of mine. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. So we are in the middle of the COVID-19 quarantine, shelter-in-place kind of thing now, and unfortunately, that means that the Boise Cup, which is our annual event we have here in Boise, it's been basically canceled.
Yeah, I didn't see a way around that. We were looking at in Boise a max of 50 people, I think, maybe by the end of May, and it just didn't and the biggest problem with an event like ours is that most of our traffic is out of state, so it just didn't seem a wise move with everything that is going on to stir that pot. I know there's some other events that are trying to do a GT like this month or maybe early next month. And I just kind of felt it, and then we could postpone it, but that also seemed problematic because of all the other events you're postponing, and we don't know if there's going to be a second spike and how that could impact things. So it just felt the best call to postpone it. And this way, as soon as quarantine went into effect, I started working on terrain because as a teacher, I was worried about them cutting into the summertime to reopen schools.
Oh yeah.
That's not happening. So I have a lot of work done, but I still have a ton more to do, and, printing stuff and getting that all ready. So
yeah.
Give us a lot more time to get ready.
I mean, yeah, because we chatted about postponing it, but we don't know what August is going to look like, or September.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, when do you push it to? I have no idea, really.
Yeah, and for me, June is the best month for me to run that event because I have the most free time. So it was a bummer, but what do you do? There's just I mean, everything else is canceled. There's not much more you can do. And I just didn't want to put anybody at risk,
for sure.
because of how much traveling would need to occur.
Yeah.
People flying in, that could be, I would hate to have that happen.
Because we pull from Washington, Oregon, California, Utah. We pull from a lot of the surrounding states. And so, you're right. I mean, they traveling in it'd be a tough sell for them anyways. And also the quarantines and all that. Yeah, we just don't know what's going to go on. It's unfortunate, but there you have it. In fact, I mean, it's weird. The whole tournament season this year is kind of just thrown out. I have no idea. Yeah. Like we go to events locally in some areas, and I mean, I'm not even sure what will be happening. So I know LVO, and that's about it. That's a long way away.
And hopefully nothing impacts that as well. So
yeah, no kidding. All right, well, it's a bummer, but like we said, next year will be even better, I guess is really the gist of it. We're talking about kind of 40K on a budget, and you run trader-a.com, which is your secondhand store. So talk a little bit about how did you get started?
For me, I'm a elementary school teacher. Right now I teach 5th grade. And when my wife and I got pregnant, we decided that it would be great if we could keep her home. And that meant that we were surviving on a teacher's budget. Yeah. Which now it's doing pretty good. I've been teaching enough that I'm higher in the pay scale, but I've always had kind of a side job. I wrote for About.com about comic books, and then a buddy of mine started doing storage lockers, a la Storage Wars, and I had done some reselling stuff on eBay before, just of my own personal stuff or things that I had got. You win an event and take that product and sell it to fund your hobbies, and started doing storage lockers, and that was a really interesting experience. It was a lot of fun, it's a weird thing, but one of the things that happened is there was a guy who was one of the big dogs at this local Portland scene. He opened a locker and there was a bunch of Warhammer in there. And the previous time that had happened, I opened a locker and it was a whole bunch of Warhammer. And I was I bid. It was the most I ever spent for a locker. And everybody was like, "Why are you bidding on that locker?" And well, there's all this Warhammer in there. And they're like, "What's that?" So I sold that really well. And then this other guy, I said, "You know what that stuff is? That's over there in the corner." And he's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "Well, it's Warhammer. If you don't, if you need, I do deal with that. Let me know." 6 months later, he runs to me and he goes, "You're the Warhammer guy." And I went, "Yeah." And he's like, I got all this Warhammer. I don't know what to do with it. So I went out to his place. I kind of gave him an honest assessment. This is kind of the ballpark. If you just try and sell it in batches, you make a whole lot more if you sell it individually. And he's like, "Well, give me," it was like $800, and I gave him $800 and just went through it and sold it, and just saw how well that can do. And because Warhammer's it's almost 40 years now that it's been in as a game. Yeah. Right. And all of the models are still usable for the most part. That's been a little tricky with some of the larger models, like the Keeper of Secrets versus the old Keeper of Secrets, or the really old Avatar. But even still, there's some people that love those models. So there's this giant market. If you look on eBay, right now there's 65,000 used auctions on eBay. So the used market is massive. And so, it just kind of happened that I started. I knew some friends who was doing the Heroic Intervention podcast, and I started to advertise on theirs, and that did pretty well. And did some other things, different places, and then moved out here and met you guys and advertised on your podcast. And that's in a nutshell. That's basically how it happened. Is you just buy, and then some of it's you can get on Facebook or Craigslist and find those big lots that people are trying to get rid of, and you jump on those and then go through the work of parting it out and listing everything individually.
So to make the most money is to take those big lots and sell them individually, right? That's really how you're sort of making the money on it, which is it's effort involved in your part, but it's work that you're basically you're getting paid for that.
It's it's a part-time job.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, if you're trying to make money at it, you have to treat it like that. If you're trying just to make some extra cash, you don't have to do it full time. You can do it just here and there to make. I know Matt does it every now and then. He'll find a lot and sell it, which is great, and you can make some money. Or like, even if there's been times where I've needed something like Vulcan, or other characters or weird things that are kind of hard to find, and you find a big lot or a lot that has that one model that you want. If you're willing to put in the work, you can sometimes make money and get what you want, or break even, or for a very little amount get what you want by putting in some effort and selling everything else in that army lot. Because a lot of people, there are people that are really good about getting the most out of their used models. They go to Facebook, they sell on eBay, whatever, and then there's people that just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's where I come in. If you don't want to deal with it, if I pay cash, if you're local, or PayPal or Venmo, if you're not, and I take everything. I don't cherry pick. I don't go, well, those don't sell too well, so I won't take that. I take everything that you got, price it out individually, give you a percentage of that. And if you like that price, you like it. If you don't, it's no skin off my back. You can try other people, try it yourself, or do whichever you need to do. So,
and the reason it works is because, like you said, Warhammer 40K models, they hold their value incredibly well, even after all these years. And it feels like the models that are worth the least amount, like that you can sell them for the least amount, but they're also the ones that you can buy and resell. But models that are like primed or half painted, basically the classic, I started this army and now I hate this army and I don't want to play it anymore and I want to get rid of it.
Yeah. The great thing that I think is that there are niches of all these gamers. There's the metalheads that love metal. There are the painted only. They only want painted models because they don't want to paint the models. They just want to get it and go.
Yeah.
There are, just so many different types of people out there buying Warhammer that have different wants, needs, and desires. And you can just tap into that. And even if it looks, even if it's junk, just a pile of bits, that still sells.
Yeah.
Because there's people that love converting. They want those bits. There's people that are looking for very specific things. So they look through those bits and, oh my gosh, that's that weird plasma gun from that one kit, or whatever it is. There's just all those different types of people, which is, I think, one of the fascinating things about the hobby is how wide and how vast it is and how many different types of people play this game.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to play the game, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I guess that's interesting too, is that, you can take your old models and sell them. You can, kind of what you said, you can buy a lot, for a reasonable amount, and then for a couple items, and then sell the rest. Or you can go out and buy an APOC box or something. Some of those cool Battle Force boxes that have a lot of cool models. And if there are things in there you don't need, you can sell those for a pretty good amount on eBay to sort of even recoup the cost of paying for that particular box set.
Yeah, you got to be careful, because I know for myself, I'll do that a lot with these new kits. I'll be like, oh, I want that model. If I buy this box set and I sell everything else, I'm only paying $10 for that model, and then I never sell the other stuff. Yeah. Even I do that sometimes, So
how much of the stuff do you tend to keep, though? Too, I mean, you buy lots from people, and people they sell you stuff, and how much of it is like, this goes into the Aaron Albert private collection of models.
It still happens if I'm looking for something.
Sure.
I find I own enough stuff now that it doesn't need to happen nearly as much. Like I just bought a giant Tzeentch army, and I don't need a lot of it, but I do need one of the Lords of Change. So I'm going to take that out. I already have everything else pretty much for a Change Host AOS army. Just need the Lord of Change. I'll take that one thing. That's kind of where I'm at right now with a lot of stuff, because I've been playing and collecting for so long that I have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Newer stuff is probably the harder thing to come by. But sometimes you just find that cool model. It's like, ooh, that looks neat. I want to hold on to that. I try not to, because it's something that we're doing. Like my wife helps me with the whole process. She takes all the pictures and she ships most of the things after I pull them. So it's kind of a family business now. And but hey, I try to do what my personal rule is. If she's pictured it, I try not to take it, because if we put that effort into picturing, I want to sell it.
Sure.
So I try, but I'll pull it out before that.
Yeah.
I just got to make sure I strike quick before she gets a hold of it and takes pictures of it.
So that I guess to get the most money out of something when you sell it, and assuming because anyone, a lot of us at some point have models we don't want anymore, we want to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like number one is to sell them individually. Individual, like what, units or models, or
how I typically do it is I will sell it by unit or individual character or vehicle. Sometimes I try to shoot for the min size of a unit. So I mean, you can buy a box of 10 Fire Warriors or 10 Pathfinders, but the minimum unit size is 5.
Okay.
So I'll typically kind of go for those min sizes, which gives people, more bang for their buck, so they can get what they need and not have to have extra things if they only want a couple of units.
Got it.
Just mainly by unit. I'll take each unit and sell those one at a time. That seems to be, in my experience, has been the best way to sell things. Sometimes it can be harder. It's getting harder with painted models a little bit because of how, especially Vegas LVO has made it so that your army has to be coherent.
Yeah.
But then not everybody plays ITC. Not everybody plays LVO. And I personally think, just from my experience of people buying stuff, that you're like I'm still selling Land Raiders. I can't keep Land Raiders in. Yeah. There's these iconic things that even if they're like quote unquote garbage or not good, people still buy them. Yeah. So there's garage gamers, there's groups of gamers, little clubs that are just playing their own way with their friends. And so there's still a lot of value in all the things out there.
What was that army, that Space Marine army that you got that was painted to like a ridiculous standard? There was quartered scheme. What was that?
Yeah, it was a Nova Marines army.
Oh yeah.
That was my first foray into high end painted models, and I had some extra cash, and this guy hit me up, and it was painted. It was all hand painted, no airbrushing. So it was like all this fading and detail work. It was gorgeous. It was so neat, and I took it to an event just to play it because it looked so good, and it won Player's Choice. It was done by a guy, I think in Poland, I want to say. He's got a Facebook page, and it was just beautiful. And I ended up selling it twice because I sold it to a guy and he didn't like it. Sold it to I think it was a dentist in Iowa. And he's just like, if you find something like this again, you hit me up. Again, because there's people that don't want to paint. They don't have time, but they have lots of money. And that selling that army enabled me to buy the 3D printer that I use to make the bolt pistols for Boise Cup.
No, okay.
So, but it's like, it's interesting. The more pricey it is and the higher painted it is, the longer it can sit.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to wait, you'll sell it eventually.
Yeah. So. And what are some tips for basically what the best way to sell? You say take pictures and things like that, but what do you find is ideal for listing armies on eBay or and other forums?
Well, in my opinion, if you are interested in making the most amount of money for your models, the best way to do that is to take really good pictures. That for me, that's the key. My wife she uses her iPhone, but we bought, it's a macro map from Table War.
Oh yeah, okay.
And have a couple little spotlights, and in my opinion, she takes some of the best pictures I've seen. Not to be biased or anything, but she takes really good pictures, and you can do up to 12. So. And the funny thing is that I have some older stuff that was taken like on just a sheet with not really good lighting, and that stuff can still sit. So I'm considering pulling those and repicturing those because the pictures, and it's so important.
Yeah.
So having good pictures is very important. You don't I think having everything in the title is probably best.
Okay.
You don't have to have a ton in the description, and I often don't. And then just do it unit by unit, model by character by character, vehicle by vehicle. That is the way to make the most money selling your models. So if you really need to get the most buck out of them to move that along, that is my opinion. And you can even do that. You can do that on eBay, but you can also do that through all the Facebook groups. As long as you go through or like on Bartertown, you list everything, take some good pictures. You can sell things that way if you don't mind the hustle. There's a lot of hustle that I don't really care for on Facebook and Bartertown and some of those different forums, because you'll get a lot of, how about these two things? How much for these two things? Well, I want this. I want that now. Yeah. Oh, never mind. I found something else. That can be a real pain. I don't enjoy that as much. Yeah. I put everything as, I don't do auctions.
Okay.
If my suggestion is, if you want to do auctions, you have an option on eBay to set the minimum price that you'll take, right? To start the auction off at. So if it's like a squad of a rhino, right? Those typically sell for about $20. If I was going to do auctions, which I don't, I would put it at the least I would be willing to take it. So if you're willing to take, so you set that for yourself, $10, $15, whatever you want to do, right? And then you let it go, and hopefully it sells for more than that. Because sometimes you want to catch that auction bidding war of people.
Yeah,
I do fixed price with a best offer option, and then I have it set to auto decline, like really low offers, so I don't have to deal with that.
Oh, okay.
That's how I do everything with a best buy it now with a best offer. For me, I see the best offer as a instant sale that I can activate at any time. Is how I view it. Some people don't like it because they're like, you're asking $50 for this thing and I want to pay you $30, but you keep declining my thing. And I'm like, well, it's just set to, I'm not going to take $30 when it's selling typically $40, $45.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm going to do. So if, in my opinion, like what I'm looking for as a buyer of lots, I'm looking for the words will not split up.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the words, I need, I don't try to, I always try and offer the same amount for people, a certain percentage of what I do. I try not to, if someone's going, like I've had people say, man, I need money right now. I need it. And this is what I need. And I'll say, hey, I can offer you more than that. I'll give you this amount. And they're like, oh, okay. Just because, I'm not looking to like screw people over or hurt.
Well, and they may want to use your services again too,
Yeah, exactly. Creates a little goodwill. And so if you're looking to buy on a budget to save the most money, look for big lots. That's my personal one. If you can always find good deals, if someone has really good deals, you can buy what you need. But if you're really, it's a friend of mine. I was talking to a friend of mine's dad, and he said everybody wants to do something. Everybody wants. They want to lose weight. They want to have a new job. They want to travel, and they want to do all the things. But not everybody will do what you need to do it, right? So if it just depends about how serious you are in paying for your hobby in different ways.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to put in a little bit of work, because it's not a crazy amount of work, and like. My wife has been selling some stuff on eBay lately just on her phone, and she's saying it's super simple. They've simplified it a whole lot. You just take the picture, you can read into your phone and post the title, so you can do things a lot faster. I have a system that I do that I can list 50 things or so an hour. Is about what I can do.
Wow.
Because I have all the pictures already. Yeah, that's kind of hard work.
You've got the system down, yeah.
Yeah, so I have like all these multiple windows open up, and I'm going back and forth, changing, and I have similar things that I'm selling. So I'll do all my Space Marines and then all my Dark Eldar. So there's a lot of fast ways to do it. So it doesn't take as much time. You just have to be willing to ship things. The great thing with the post office is they have all these free boxes with priority, which is more to ship. Like I hardly do any priority if I can afford it, because most stuff is under 13 ounces.
Yeah.
So you can ship it really cheap. So if you're going to buy, look for those big lots, look for people saying they won't split it up. And then all I do is, and like I wrote, there's articles on Frontline Gaming. I wrote all about this called How to Be a Warhammer Kingpin.
Sure.
Right. I did a couple different articles that explains everything in detail, basically what I'm saying. So and it's no secret because like for me, it's like I said, 65,000 used auctions on eBay alone. And if you go on Facebook, all these different buy sell trade groups, the used market is thriving. It's massive. So someone trying to get me out of the market, it just isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I have friends in my own team who do the same thing that I do.
Sure.
Anyway, so basically on eBay, I'll do a search, an advanced search where I search sold only items. And that's the key. Because if you go on eBay and you just search what the item is, like I had a friend of mine go, man, Tesseract, Satan shards, they're selling like just the little things they're selling for $200. And I'm like, well, hold on. Is that what people are listing them for, or is that what people are selling them for? And then I say search for sold. And he's like, oh, they're only selling for 25.
Yeah.
Like just because someone lists it, because you can get real excited about that and you can make some bad decisions. Do not search just for things that are listed. You can search for things that are sold, and you can get a really good idea. I typically cut out, for the most part, all the auction items because you'll notice that a lot of those go really low.
Yeah.
Because there's so much out there, people are missing it. People are getting. That's another way to get steals, is to have what you're looking for saved on eBay. So if you're looking for a Wraith Knight or whatever, you can say, alert me when a new Wraith Knight comes onto eBay. And then if someone, and then you can also search for about to end items. So you can be looking, you can start flagging auctions and see how they go. And if they're not going for very much, set your price. You don't want to spend more than $50 for a Wraith Knight, which is a decent price. You can find that or better because someone just wants to get rid of it. And you had that search, it pops up and you snag it.
Yeah.
Or it's at the very end and you put that final bid in and you snag it.
And that's another reason why running these things as auctions, it can be a problem because, they might run for 10 days, 12 days, whatever you set it for.
Yeah.
People may not see them in that moment. Like they're not there. So
the offset of that is if you have something that's hot and a bunch of people are looking for it, you can make a whole lot more than it typically sells for because people want it. Like I shudder to think what that Catachan
Colonel
is going to be going for on eBay.
Yeah.
Because especially as soon, I think it's going to come out really soon around this time.
Yeah.
You're going to see that thing going for probably $200-$300.
Yeah.
On eBay because people got to have it now.
Yeah.
And then if you just wait, it'll typically slow down. So if you're going to sell your stuff, list everything individually.
Yep.
If you want to buy the stuff, look for big lots.
Yep.
And if you're just kind of dipping your toes in, go on Craigslist every day and type in Warhammer and see what pops up.
Sure. No.
Look at if you're on Facebook, be in your local groups. We have Boise Warhammer here. There's all these different groups for Warhammer players for 40K and Age of Sigmar in your area, and just look at those as that pops up. You'll often find people selling stuff that as a good deal, or they post something, or they'll say things like, make me an offer.
Yeah.
And you kind of figure out how much it's worth, figure out how much you want to pay of that, and just send them an offer, because the worst they can say is no. Then you can take what you want, sell the rest, and you're golden.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So, and we were chatting also about to get started with 40K, you can sell other things besides just 40K models. If you look around your house, surely there's things that you aren't you're not interested anymore, or hobbies you used to have that you're not that, you just want to get out of.
Yeah.
Getting rid of things in your home and trying to, and selling them is, there's a certain way you can do that to sort of, first of all, you're decluttering your house, but you're also putting money where you want to, into things that you want.
Yeah. That is the way that most, YouTuber resell gurus tell you to get started. You look around, you go walk around your house. You have $20, $50 bills, $100 bills lying all over the place.
Mm.
You just have to cut out the emotion of that thing. Like, oh, I'm thinking about using it that one day. You're like, if you haven't used it the past year, think about selling it, because if whatever it is, a pair of headphones, an MP3 player, even stuff that you don't think is worth anything, like CDs, there are people that will buy that, because there's how many people are in the world. I think one of the reasons why I personally use eBay is because I believe last I checked was like 250 million users. There's just so many people. 182, I think, is what it's saying right now. That is a massive market.
Yeah.
So there's going to be someone there looking to buy that stuff. So you can take things around your house. You can take old board games. You can take other game systems that you don't play anymore, like War Machine, or or Chainmail.
Yeah.
Or you might have stuff that you don't even like. Dungeons and Dragons models are insanely valuable. Those booster packs that you would buy, or even like Mage Knight and HeroClix. And all these weird game systems that have been around, there are people still playing those, and there are still people buying those stuff. Yeah. And sometimes they are paying a lot of money for some of those items. So you can amass a good, tidy amount of money to go fund your hobby.
Yeah.
So it's find stuff around your house and sell it.
Yeah, there you go. And so you actually have a new business as well that you just started up. So talk to us about that.
That we just started this past end of last year. It's called t-shirtfam.com. It's kind of a branch of the event running stuff that I do. We're basically making t-shirts. We are able to print onto just about any type of fabric, polyester, cotton, poly blends, and we're making shirts and stuff for teams, for events. And basically how we run it is there's no like weird fees. There's no digital file fee or setup fee. You can do one shirt or 4 shirts. We can do at high end full color prints. We're working with Goat Boy Thomas from Texas, selling some of his shirt designs. And it's not screen printing. It's not 1 to 5 colors. We can do fading. Basically, if it's a digital file, we can make it.
Yeah. And
so that's another thing that me and the wife have started to try and keep her at home and making money. And
yeah. And then the cool thing about it is that you can basically custom print a single T-shirt for somebody. Like they want to have a shirt for whatever reason, and it's t-shirtfam.com, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and then also, so like I have Battle Host shirts can be purchased through t-shirtfam.com, and so essentially
you got to push that more, Mark. You got to push those shirts out more.
I do.
All your fans go buy a shirt.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll put a link in there for sure. Yeah,
tell them why they would want to buy a Battle Host shirt from me. Is that it supports the Battle Hosts?
No, yeah, it does. It does it too.
The Battle Host gets a cut of what we sell for those. So we're trying to do that whole thing on a kind of a small scale. There's other businesses that do it. What we can provide that I don't think they can in some aspects is that one-on-one contact. And we have quality controls that I'm not seeing in certain other printers because some of them are cutting corners in certain ways that I've seen. So they're not as bright and vibrant as what we're able to do. Yeah. And so, yeah, if you have a podcast or a YouTube channel or an event, and the other great thing that I like about what we do, it doesn't cost anybody anything. Yeah. Because we have the shirts on hand, and you only get paid when you sell a shirt. Yeah. So that's kind of our concept with that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you showed up to one of our events having printed. It was on canvas, but it was some of the pictures from like some of the Warhammer codexes, and they were gorgeous. They were, like you said, they weren't 5 colors. They were a print. It looked like a picture. It was the digital picture on canvas, and you can do that on T-shirts too.
And those, just to make sure everybody's clear, we didn't sell those. We just did those as prizes.
Those were giveaway prizes,
to,
yes.
to
yes.
give out.
Yeah, you
And
weren't
I
using
just-
the IP, yeah.
No, I just did it because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Because I found out we can print Dick Blick and some other places, they sell like backed canvases.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we can print on that and they fit in these little frames, and it looks just like it looks, I'd say it's a different kind of thing than like a poster.
Yeah.
It has like texture,
Yeah.
and it almost looks painted in some aspects.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite one was the Lost and Damned.
Oh, Lost
Lost
and
of-
Damned, yeah.
Space Marine.
Yeah.
Oh, he looks so cool.
Yeah.
So just printing those out and giving those out for a little event we did at the end of the year for Christmas time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool. It's a lot of fun. So there's lots of ways we can support.
Yeah.
We can do hats and hoodies and
Yeah, so if you want to just print off a shirt, you've got, I don't know, a baseball team or a bowling league, or you have a group that's going to LVO and you want to have team shirts printed, or you're a content provider like myself, or like Thomas Goatboy, you can put designs out there and people can purchase the t-shirts through you.
yeah.
And it doesn't cost us anything. We don't have to deal with we're not in the t-shirt mailing business, because you're taking care of all that.
Yeah, I had all the infrastructure of shipping from the eBay business.
Sure.
So it just kind of works as part of that. And so if you have an event, you want to make some extra money, you just get a design together and we can pre-sell those shirts,
Mm-hmm.
deliver them to you to make extra money for your event.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes to buy a t-shirt.
And
Buy a Battle
talk
House
about
t-shirt.
it. Talk about it every week.
Yeah, I should probably start doing that. Yeah.
Can I get on my soapbox?
Yeah. So get on your soapbox.
I'll get on my soapbox. Most of the people that I run into that are looking to buy stuff on a budget, you get the line, they can't afford it at the store, which I totally understand, because you're paying full price. You're paying a lot of money at a game store.
Mhm.
But my soapbox would be, if you can't, and a lot of people have a hard time doing that, find a way to support the game store.
Yeah.
That could be volunteering your time to run events. That could be doing terrain repairs or terrain builds. If tell the store, you buy the terrain, I'll paint it, and you give me the paints, and I will paint it for you. I will take care of that for you. So that helps your gaming community out and keeps your store in business and doing well. Because if you can't, I understand it. If you can't support the game store in that financial way, find a way to help them out another way. That will be kind of my soapbox, I hope. Because, we need people to help run events. We need people to make terrain. And I think terrain is a huge one, if you can help with that, because most game stores have a really hard time knowing what to buy, knowing what to do, knowing how to put together tables for, especially for 40K.
Yeah.
40K is so terrain centric right now.
Yeah. And just like you said, I mean, buying locally is just a good idea anyways. And I mean, not saying you have to buy everything locally, but
Sure.
it's nice when you go in there. I mean, even if you're just buying a soda or a drink, or, you're buying a model every once in a while, but also, like you said, you can devote your time to helping out the store, because a lot of times the stores need assistance. They don't. The terrain sits on a shelf, it gets bashed, it gets destroyed, it's nice to have people sit in or come in and sort of be stewards of that, and to make sure that the store is, representing itself well when people run 40K events there, or just play.
Yeah. You help grow the community. That gives more people to play, more people to buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really great way to help support the store, in my opinion. And if you're looking for deals on new stuff, they have the Start Collecting kits, which can be really great.
Mm-hmm.
The Nurgle one is a great kit. The Plague drones, the Games Workshop tries to sell them for $60, and they're selling a Herald, 10 Plague Bearers, Nurglings, and 3 Plague drones for, I think, $95.
Yeah.
So the price difference there. So some of them are really good to save some money on, and the army boxes, or the apocalypse boxes, or the start collecting boxes, those are all, or the Shadow Spear, those releases that they do can be great ways to get some great models.
Yeah, for sure. And in most stores, usually locally, I think ours has like a 10% off. But and sometimes for events they might do a little more. But I guess it's always like, support your local store. It's because at some point, if you don't, they won't be there. And especially coming out of this, they're going to need your support more than ever.
Definitely. We're looking to do as much as we can for the local stores to try and keep the gaming community going. The cool thing is that a lot of the people are very generous, and I've talked to some store owners, and they've been very appreciative of the people still doing curbside pickup and supporting the game stores at this time, which is really great. So
yeah, for sure. All right, Aaron. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been great.
All right, and that's trader-a.com and t-shirtfam.com. All right, awesome. All right, so thanks so much for listening to our show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehost@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us and like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can leave us a review on iTunes, which does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehost. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show and staying engaged with the 40K community. Thanks for listening to Battle Hosts.
Remember to only buy a Sister of Battle if you're going to actually use her.
Yeah, and build a better community. Good night.